Welcome back, everyone. We're back at the Power Baseball League. Last week, we talked about modifying views for your users, consistency across your different views and columns, making sure our model-driven app just had the views that we needed. So today, we want to look at a few more advanced views that we can do, both from system views and from the user perspective of what they're doing. So let's jump in and take a look.
Perfect. So we talked about we're going to do two different changes today. So I'm going to talk you through the first one, and we're going to go with making some changes to our registration entity, or table. So just so you understand, we have a table that captures all of the registrations for any particular client or contact. So that's really a one-to-many relationship, right? One contact could have multiple registration records. And so what we want to do is we want to take the view that's in the registration, because one of our use cases is to be able to pull up all the registration data for a given season. And we want to see specific information about that registrant on the record without having to go back and say, oh, well, here's the applicant or registrant. We got to go back to that record and open it to see. We should be able to see their age and who the parent is right on the record. So let's make that quick change. So if we go into the view, and we'll just call it active registrations. Yeah, we'll just use that one. And so the first thing I think we should do is remove that name field, because it is a valuable column, but not so much in here. So we can remove that one. And then let's add in applicant. And that can go right at the front. So now we'll know who the applicant is. And it can be tricky, with the way it sometimes doesn't let you add that one. So we know the applicant, and then now we also want information to come into this from the contact, so it's a related. So up at the top, if we click related, we can see we can have the applicant contact, and now we're looking at all of the fields from the contact that's linked to this record, which is great. So we just want to build in age and the primary caregiver. So we want to know how old that applicant is, and we want to know that, I think it's called primary caregiver is what we called it.
It is?
Yep. Perfect. Now, one thing that came up while we were kind of walking through this that we don't have built out, that just as an example of things that kind of come to light as you're working through this, we might actually want to equip the system with an element that's going to automatically grab the parent caregiver or primary caregiver and put it onto the form as well, or maybe even just pull it into the table, maybe not on the form, but pull it in. So that would then allow us to go and grab information from the parent primary caregiver. I keep calling it from the parent caregiver record. So if we wanted to say, for example, the email and phone number of that right from the registration record, in order to do that, we'd have to also pull that record in. So it's a thing that kind of, as you're designing this out, you'd be like, well, actually, it might be really helpful to have that information. There's other ways of achieving it too, right? We could also set something up that takes that parent caregiver data and puts it onto the contact record, which then we would be able to pull in here as through the applicant connection. So lots of different sort of options. These are all things that you're going to want to think about as you go through. But for now, for the purposes of this video, this achieves what we're looking for. We just want to know who's the youth, how old are they, who is their parent guardian, and then see them applied. Now, just looking at this, I see that primary caregiver doesn't have any data, which is odd because it should for all of those. So that's something we might want to dig into after the fact. For the purposes of getting the field into the view, we don't need to do that now, but that's something we would flag and say, wait a minute, no, what's going on? Maybe that's the wrong fields. Maybe we have two in there for some reason. We kind of dig into that after the fact.
Yeah, a data issue for us to work on. I think we could also pull in our division, right? Because we want to know if they're
yes,
not just what season they're applying for, but what division within that season.
Yeah, so, great call out.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, so that's great. And I think there's lots of other ways. Like you said, if we wanted to pull the primary caregiver right into this registration, there's lots of ways we can do that, even with calculated fields or with Power Automate or workflow, right? Options, we could easily get this populated on the registration to do that. Also, this is updating the view to include this data, but we could also create a quick view form that we add onto the registration form to see that data as well.
Absolutely.
So,
good call.
Lots of options there. Anything else you want to talk about before we move away from this view?
No, that data issue is bothering me, but we'll deal with that offline. So I don't know why it's blank. So
Yeah.
But other than that, that's good. Yeah. Design wise, that's fine. So we're in good shape there.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the other thing we wanted to look at is this is a view that you would be creating for your users, but there are also a lot of new features for creating views and to make them easy for users to do, right? So let's look quickly. This is our contact view that we created on the last video, but let's say our users want to make this a bit more specific. They want to look at the contact details and see just those who have those related registrations that we were talking about. So what you can do here is now click this little filter icon that allows you to add advanced filters to this view. You've probably seen you can already use these little drop downs to filter. So let's filter just by, say, our youth here. Click apply.
That little thing is the only, just to jump in real quick, that's the part that I don't like about this, just to be perfectly transparent, is when you pick the value, you have to then like click out of it to then click the OK or apply button. Yeah. And that's a little tweak. Microsoft, if you're listening, please try and fix that because it's driving me crazy. I don't think they are, but you never know.
I'm sure there's lots of things they're working on all the time. So
absolutely.
Maybe. Yeah. But yeah, so we did that. And if we click on this advanced filters, you'll see that that contact type filter is already added here. And then let's say we want to add that they have a related registration, right? So here I'm going to say add related entity. And I'm going to choose the registration, right? They're an applicant. And then I want to choose that the current season applied equals our 2021 season, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to click apply. Beautiful. You see we've narrowed down that view. And then the one note on this is if you want to update your columns, that still needs to be done through the classic advanced find editor. But let's stick with this view we created for now. We can click on the ellipsis and create view, and we can save the current filters as a view. So we can call this youth registered for 2021. Oops. See that. Save. And then that's going to be just a personal view that I'll see here in my list of views. But if it's something I'm working with, I can quickly pin that for all users to use, or I can continue to edit it. I can go to Advanced Find and make it more complex and add in additional columns. So lots of options that I have there. But really quickly, we just wanted to show you this organization, how we can modify the columns here, how we can modify the filtering and do it all right within this main interface, which I think is really nice for users and makes it just so seamless to work with. And one other tool we wanted to quickly mention before we hop off today is the within XRM Toolbox that we talked about last week, they have this view layout or view transfer tool, which allows you to transfer these views between environments. So this can be really helpful. Let's say you're working with users on your UAT and they build certain views to help them verify data or to work with data while they're just in training. And then when they get to production, they want to use those same views again. We can use this tool to move those views from your development or training environment to your production environment. So just something to be aware of that's out there and available and can be used for personal views, not just system views.
That's super handy. That's a super handy one, right? Because it saves you a little bit of time having to move things around manually. One thing I wanted to circle back to just really quickly, I pulled that view up on my screen because, like I said, it was kind of bugging me that wasn't. I think that might be a function of the system because the view itself is showing perfectly. That parent caregiver data is populating in the actual view. It's probably that because it's a lookup. It, for whatever reason, in the preview pane that you see as you're building those changes out in the back end of the Maker portal, you maybe don't have the ability to see a lookup value in the columns, other than or not like with the actual columns on the form. All that data was there. So little strange thing, but that explains why we couldn't see the parent primary caregiver data in the preview. It is there. It's just not in the preview mode. So little thing to note.
Yeah, great reminder to always always check in the system, always test your work and all of that, right? Don't just trust what you're seeing. And then, when we come here and we see how it appears, then we might say, well, there's still some things we want to change. We want to adjust some spacing, and you can go back and change that and make your updates. So
it never ends, that list of things, right? As soon as you publish this and make it available to users within a couple of days, somebody's going to say, wouldn't it be great if we had this column or this field or whatever the case may be? So it never ends, this kind of stuff. So there's some really great tools to do all this. And Microsoft's really adding lots of layers here to give you the ability, like you saw 2 different ways today, to build out some changes on a view, or build a view from what you're seeing and just kind of edit it and tweak it a little bit and build out something else you need. I mean, that's the bottom line of all of this. You want users to have the data that they need at their fingertips. And so there's some great features and functions to do just that. So thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. We will be back next week looking at, and I don't actually have it in front of me, so I'm going to stall. We're going to talk a little bit about charts and some of the data. So essentially bringing in some visual representation to those views and the data we see. So maybe things that we might touch on perhaps that when we're looking at all those registrations and we just pulled in how old those kids are. So let's see how many registrations we have by age of child or things like that. So stay tuned for that next week, and we will be back with you then. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.